Out here and start going live.
There it goes. All right.
All right. Welcome, Facebook. Today we're in the Insane Asylum talking with Dale. I'm a butcher at Dale. I'm sorry. I know I'm going to do this. Kazmarek or Merrick. Kazmarek. Okay. And Dale's pretty famous down in the Illinois area because he's been doing the paranormal research and investigations for quite a long time. A lot longer, I think, than what Joe and I have been doing.
Well, yeah. 1975?
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I've in my youth,
Here we go.
did dabble in it some, and I'm a transplant to Wisconsin from California. So I was born and raised in Cali, and there's a lot of stuff out there too that we had some weirdness about. But so anyway, is paranormal the only, or the paranormal, like the spirits and stuff? Is that the only things that you investigate?
Pretty much so. I mean, I've been involved in investigating ghost haunting and poltergeist phenomena since the mid-1970s, but my interest goes all the way back to childhood. Actually, my parents and grandparents telling me ghost stories when I was a youngster. I get, just like everybody else, I'm kind of interested in anything kind of paranormal, UFOs, Bigfoot, cryptids. Occasionally when we're investigating one thing, we come across something else. And this happened several times. There's been locations where we were investigating reports of ghostly activity, and there were reports of Bigfoot or cryptid activity nearby too, which is, it's almost like, I like to call them like portal hauntings. Things that kind of doorway just opens up and a whole bunch of stuff just comes in, and it could be everything from UFOs to Bigfoot to ghost and poltergeist phenomena.
That kind of makes some sense because, you never know what you're actually going to find whenever you're out doing these investigations. So.
Well, I mean, if you go all the way back to the early UFO reports, they used to call them, back in the 60s or so, they used to call them flaps. They still may call them flaps. And if you read the newspaper articles from local newspapers around, especially in the Michigan area, I did a lecture a couple of years ago on portal hauntings, and the location in and around where these UFOs were being reported, people were seeing an uptick not only in poltergeist activity, ghost activity, hauntings, and also Bigfoot activity all at the same time when this UFO flap was going on. And then it lasted for a few weeks, maybe a month or so, and then everything just completely went away.
That's kind of interesting. So, in a way, that can be tied in. You can tie that in with the UFO sightings themselves, then, saying that maybe the energy that they're creating, or the vortex that they may be creating at the time, could be causing some of this other energies to come into our realm and cause a little bit of havoc.
Well, even people like John Keel, a very famous Fortean researcher, the guy who wrote the book The Mothman Prophecy, and many other very interesting books. I mean, he came across what he called ultra-dimensional people. In other words, he believed that a lot of this activity that was taking place was because of again, a parallel dimension, a parallel universe, if you will, doors opening up, some portals opening up in some way, and allowing this rampant activity to take place for weeks and months on end. And it happened to him several times, even in Point Pleasant, West Virginia. He even came across reports of doppelgangers and so forth. He would go out to do an interview with an individual about a UFO case or something about the Mothman. He would arrive there, and the people said, "Well, what are you talking about? You were just here last week, weren't you, when you interviewed us?" That's just creepy.
That's kind of interesting, but that could also be something like a time dilation phenomenon as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Where
paranormal
something has happened and then it repeats itself.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've heard of that kind of stuff too.
That's why the paranormal is so fun. I mean, you never know what you're getting involved with sometimes, even though you do research.
Definitely,
something totally different, unexpected.
I've always had an interest in it, even whenever I was young, because I had a parent like that too, that you were talking about, where sit you down and tell you ghost stories and swear on the Bible that it was true.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. My dad was big on stuff like that. He used to take us out to, what was that? The Arboretum, telling us stories about the Arboretum out there. Yeah. And then he'd roll the car windows down because he'd take us out there at night and freak us out. Never worked with me. It's like, yeah, okay, where? You know?
Right.
Yeah. Well, I've been around and seen so much stuff in my youth that I'm, I guess, what you'd call jaded to it. So I no longer have that flight response. You know, whenever someone tries to spook you or something happens around you that you would normally get spooked at, doesn't even bother me anymore. I don't run. I actually stand my ground and question what's happened.
Well, I can take it a step further. I mean, again, I don't run. You know, a lot of these TV shows, unfortunately, you see people, and I'm not going to mention the TV shows. I know which ones you're talking about. I mean, basically, they scream like a little girl and they run away. I mean, I just do the opposite. If something happens and I see something down the hallway and I'm looking and say, "Oh, wow, I'm running down the hallway after the stuff," you know, rather than running away, because that's what we're there for. We're there to investigate and to debunk or, you know, analyze whatever data we come up across, whether it's something we see visually or something later that shows up on tape.
Right. Yeah, that's the way I am. I think Joe's having a little difficulty or something. But yeah, that's kind of the way I am. I want, if I feel I caught something on video, I'll actually try and debunk it myself. Yeah. Let's see it. Oh, hang on. Joe just called me. Give me a second. Yeah, you're on the air. Hey, I don't know if I'll be able to get back or not. We lost power out here. I heard explosion. I think a power transformer got hit or something. Ouch. I was wondering. Did you hear that, Dale?
About a storm or something?
Yeah, we're both having storms right now, Joe and myself. And I live in Fort Atkinson, and he lives over in Watertown, and that's why he dropped from us here, because he lost power at his house, so everything went complete.
Oh wow!
Complete outage.
Yeah, it happens, and you know, sometimes it's kind of creepy because we're always talking about ghosts, and things that seem to happen when we talk about ghosts. I've been on numerous shows.
Hang on. Yeah. Hello. Sorry. Oh wow. So the whole complex is down. Wow. Well, that sucks. No problem, man. I'll try to hold down the fort here, and I'm sure Dale's done this a lot too, so he can maybe help me out a little.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
All right. No, it happens, man. It happens. Yeah. All right. Yep. Bye. Wow. Yeah, we weren't really expecting the storms, because a couple of days ago they were saying we were going to get them, and then they changed their mind on it and said, "Oh no, it's going to be sunny all weekend."
Yeah, right.
And then all of a sudden we get these storms come in like this.
Well, like I was saying, I mean, it's a little unnerving sometimes, because you know, a lot of the times, you know, I won't say a lot, but it's happened to me, you know, several times when I'm on the air, and then suddenly either I drop completely or somebody else drops completely because of storms or something like that. And you often wonder if there's something else afoot. I mean, maybe the spirits have been angry.
Yeah, sometimes it makes you think that, but
Yeah.
But no, like I was saying though, that when I do wind up catching anything, I try to go back to the place that it happened, and I want to debunk it myself, because I would rather. I'm probably my worst critic. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Because I would rather show that this can happen, or that I can recreate it, rather than have somebody else do it and try to make me look bad or something. I don't know. It's just the kind of person I am, I guess.
Well, we were doing an investigation one year down in the Thomas House in Red Boiling Springs, Tennessee. And it's a very famous haunted location. It's been on a lot of these television shows, but we went out to spend the whole weekend out there. And we actually had a camera set up in the foyer, which is basically an area where they've actually seen a shadow image kind of come through the door and walk over to the check-in desk. And directly next to it is a chair they call the Al Gore chair, because Al Gore actually was there at one time and he sat in that chair, so they named it the Al Gore chair. And we set a camera in that foyer to see if we could catch that shadow person coming through. We didn't figure we'd catch anything. And I don't know, about maybe a half hour or so later, we had some sort of really strange light reflection or something that showed up in the window. It's kind of it was the weirdest thing, because we actually saw it live. We actually had our monitors up in the command center. We had somebody watching. And, oh, wow, what's that? So immediately we went down and we tried to figure out what the heck we just had, because if you're familiar with the Thomas House, it's not like right on the street. There's a big front lawn, and I mean a big front lawn. So you're well far away from the traveling cars going back and forth. And so we tried every possible way to debunk this by, taking flash pictures of us, shining a flashlight at us, illuminating our front, illuminating our back, having cars come up the driveway, see what the car headlights were, and we couldn't even come anywhere close to what this thing was. So we spent more than a half hour trying to debunk this in real time.
That sounds like what I would do. In the Thomas House, I think I seen that one actually on the show Ghost Hunters. Okay. I believe, and that's the show that Jason and Grant, the two plumbers,
right,
friends, they got it together. I used to watch them all the time. I loved watching their stuff because they seemed to be more in the field of trying to prove that it was capable of being able to be done by a person rather than the supernatural itself. They were kind of like me. They wanted to make sure that before they showed anything that they made sure that they couldn't recreate it themselves.
Right.
So
yeah, we try to do that whenever possible when we're at investigation. Sometimes we're at locations where we're there for 8-10 hours or more, and we're shooting massive amounts of videotape, audio tape, still cameras and so forth that we have to go through. And sometimes we will catch things in real time that we actually see with our naked eye. And before obviously I put anything up, or even after a review later, I'll go through and I'll make sure as best as we possibly can that this was not caused by a natural source, by natural explanation, somebody talking in the background, some shadows, some lights from outside, things of that nature. But not all the time you debunk these things satisfactorily before you put them online. Some I just kind of hold back because we're still trying to explore possible ways that this could have happened. And then later we can always make an update to the website or something that we've tried to debunk this, and we can. So we're going to put it up, and here it is, and give us your thoughts on it.
Right. That's kind of that's the way I see being able to do it, because there are shows today that I've seen, like you. I'm not going to say any names, but I'm not too hip on some of them that are out there, because to me, I feel when I'm watching them that a lot of it's staged.
Yeah.
And I can't do that. I can't do that to anybody that wants to seriously watch me or see some of the stuff that I put up. I can't just to me that's completely wrong. Joe and I had an investigation in Baraboo this not too long ago, and we were in the house, and I set a camera up in the attic. It's just a digital camera with the night vision and everything, and I actually plugged it into the power source so I didn't have to rely on the battery. And the owner or the renter of the house was up there with me, and she actually seen me push the record button. So there was no way that the camera should have shut itself off. But at the end of the night, when I went back up to get the camera, I walk in the little doorway, and I was going to do an EVP quick with it, and the camera was completely off. It had quit recording. So I couldn't explain that, and I'm not sure why it even happened. But it's little stuff like that that occasionally happens with us. We had one out at Az Salon. It's out by Lake Mills, where we actually had really good hits on the EMF meter, and had the camera focused on it to where it was showing it. I mean, it was all over the place, and you could move the EMF and it would quit. The hit would quit, and you put it back to where we were getting it, and you'd come back. When he went to download the video from the camera, it was corrupt.
Yeah,
we weren't able to get it out.
We've actually had similar occurrences when I was using way back when I used to use full-size VHS camcorders. They were called Zero Lux, and basically they were not night shot cameras, so you need to have some sort of illumination. And we would be in locations, whether we set up a static camera or we were walking through or doing whatever, and we would get what I would call an EMF burst on the camera. You'd actually see when you see a line kind of go up to the picture like that.
Yeah.
And to me, that's some sort of electromagnetic field that just interfered with our camera, because those are magnetic recording tapes. The open reels, the VHS, the cassette tapes, even the hi-8s are all magnetic recording tapes. And if we believe that spirits are a form of energy and can be picked up with EMF meters, there's always a possibility that they could be nearby and have caused that burst. And we've had that several times that have happened. We've actually had camcorders also shut down by themselves, and when we check the battery, it's like 80%. So we can't figure it out. It's not the battery problem. It's not like we were into an outlet and we lost power to the house, and we were doing remote stuff. So it's weird how that happens. The only thing I can say, maybe the ghost just didn't want to be filmed.
That's kind of how I thought of it. If there was a spirit in the vicinity there, maybe they didn't want to be on the camera, and therefore they just went and kind of pushed the button or something to shut it off.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I see where you're going with that, with the older stuff. Yeah, I remember everything, you know, your regular cassette players and your VHS and everything. That is all magnetic tape, and the way you get your video off of it is depending on how the little it's the magnetic stuff on the strips are arranged.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get technical here, and
I mean, even if you go back to the time of the very early EVPers, you know, say Dr. Konstantin Radovay, Professor Hans Bender from Freiburg University, Christopher Jorgensen, who was thought to be the father of EVPs, he was out actually trying to record bird songs. When he played them back in the middle of an open field, the only person, he actually found voices on the tape. And they were all using magnetic recording tapes, bulky open reel tape recorders. So the idea is that at least a lot of people, even people like Sarah Estep, which I worked with a lot of times from the AAEVP, the American Association for Electronic Voice Phenomena, she actually believed that what was happening, and the reason that we weren't hearing the voices as they were being recorded only in a playback, is that the voices that were imprinted some way directly on the magnetic recording tape, bypassing the physical microphone and actually imprinting themselves directly on the tape. And that's why you would only hear it on playback. And that explains a lot about different things that that happen in later using VHS camcorders and cassette tapes, and even what they call DAT, digital audio tapes, that used to be around for a bit. These are all susceptible to EMF burst or EMF interference, and in some cases it can be explained away, but most often it's not. Some cases we've actually been able to say that we may have actually picked up a stray CV burst or some sort of audio transmission from, say a two-way radio or cab going past or something like that, which is really kind of strange. How would you pick that up? But occasionally it does happen. We proved it, but in most cases we're out in the middle of nowhere when these things take place.
Right.
How do you explain that?
Well, being out in the middle of nowhere and then getting some sort of a voice phenomena like that is you know, that's hard to actually explain at that point too. And then with today's technology, with everything going digital and everything like that, these voice recorders, they pick up their mics are so sensitive they can pick up almost anything.
Yeah.
And then also the description of some of the spirits whenever they do wind up manifesting is that they're pulling all the energy they can out of the atmosphere and out of anything near them, so that's why a lot of times your batteries will go dead almost immediately. Yeah,
batteries, and that's even explains cold spots, because the theory behind cold spots
is the heat out too.
They're pulling the heat out, which is basically an activated air, so to speak. It's molecules that are bouncing together faster, causing friction, causing heat. And when they're using that energy, basically they're leaving behind a cold spot that quite literally you can walk into. And I've actually experienced this many times. I've literally walked into and walked out of a cold spot.
I have as well.
The temperature has been 15, 20 degrees sometimes, but you can literally see your breath. Now, how do you explain that? I mean, it's not a faulty air conditioning. It's not a draft coming through the outside. You're in the middle of the summer, and you might be in an air-conditioned room, but suddenly you walk into a cold spot that's 20 degrees colder. That's strange.
Yeah, I've actually had that happen to me too. Nice warm summer night in California, out there where I'm originally from. We had some of the areas out there in the lower vicinities of the valley where even on the warmer summer nights you'd get some fog. But I've been in some of the areas out there where we were doing some, goofing around as kids mostly, and that's what it was to me at the time. And now I've got a lot more interest into it. But I've walked through cold spots out there in the middle of summer on a summer night where you could see your breath because of the difference in the temperatures. And a lot of that happened around riverbeds. Yeah. And that was something else about the riverbeds that I discovered during that time too, is that even though the river may be dry at the time, the energy is still flowing there because of how the water had been flowing in there previous.
Yeah, one thing that I wrote about in some of my books, including the 2 on Chicago Ghosts, Windy City Ghosts 1 and Windy City Ghosts 2, is that a lot of locations are very near running water. And running water can act as a catalyst. Actually, you get the natural energy given off by running water, streams or rivers, can actually, I believe, can actually be harnessed by spirits that are nearby to manifest in either a physical form, a voice, a cold spot, some sort of odor, anything that they want to represent at the time. And so that's why when you're close to places that have running water or places that are built of limestone, that's another area that we look into very heavily. That a lot of buildings built of limestone are sometimes haunted, and maybe something in the limestone. And it's just sedimentary rock that's been layer upon layer for thousands of years. But very often, they're within these layers of limestone, there are fossils of creatures that were trapped in there, and and died in there. So I don't know if that has something to do with it. It's kind of a far-fetched theory, but limestone buildings and water, especially underground water or water you're not aware of, those are usually good tickets for some activity to take place.
Right, the underground aquifers and stuff. Yeah, one of the places, the town I lived at out there, we had a park right next to the river itself out there, and it's called Kingston Park. And we go out there all the time, 2-3 o'clock in the morning, and you could literally see what have become known as shadow people.
Yeah,
the shadow figures that just constantly throughout that entire park. And I always thought it was because of they're feeding off of the energies that came off of the river itself, the energy of the flow of the water, and that that there was something that may have happened in that particular area to maybe keep them there.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's why when we go to a location, I try to extensively research the area before we even get there. So we have an idea what to expect, what the past history of the location, past paranormal experiences, any past investigations that have taken place and how successful they were. So it kind of gives you a good feeling around what's going on. And shadow people, I mean, I have literally seen my share of ghosts in 45 years. Going around investigating a little more than 4,000 cases. I've been in locations of Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum in Weston, West Virginia was the cream of the crop. I mean, we were actually sitting in a hallway. One side of the hallway was all patients' rooms. On the other side of the hallway was just kind of like a day room for visitors. And I just kind of set out, we were doing an EVP session. I said, was talking to the spirits that might be still around, patients that were maybe hanging around. Come across the hallway into the day room. There are visitors waiting for you there to talk with you. And no sooner had I said that, 3 or 4 of us in the group distinctly saw a shadow person run from that hallway across the hallway and into that room. Of course, the cameras were facing in the wrong direction, so they didn't capture it, but they captured the response for the people that jumped up, looked over there, and before I said anything of what I saw, I said, "What did you see?" And they saw, "We just saw a shadow run across there." So it was pretty amazing. And most of what I've seen in my travels have been shadow people. I don't believe I've actually ever seen a full-bodied apparition. We've recorded full-bodied apparitions. We have a lot of great evidence on our website, ghostresearch.org, that people can actually go to and look at some of our many cases that we investigated, including the video, the audio, and the still pictures that we've taken. And a lot of them do have full-bodied apparitions that we cannot explain, shadow people that we cannot explain, and quite amazing EVPs.
I'm going to have to check that out. And you said that was
ghostresearch.org.
Ghostresearch.org. Okay. Yeah. Since you're in Illinois, I was just kind of curious. Have you heard of the place called Crybaby Bridge down by the quads?
I'm familiar with a lot of different Crybaby bridges. This one is the one you're talking about is where?
It's down, I believe, by the Quad Cities area.
Oh yeah. In Monmouth.
I think that's the one.
It's
where the legend. Go ahead. The legend of this one goes: you pull your car onto the center of the bridge, and you put it in park. Get out. And you put talcum powder or some sort of powder on the back of your car. Mm-hmm. And then you get back in your car and put it in neutral and take your foot off the brake, and you'll get pushed off, on the road part, but it'll get pushed off of the bridge itself. And then once you're off the bridge, you put it back in park and go back around to the back where you put the powder, and there's supposedly handprints in the powder. And what it is supposed to be, some of the legend goes that it was a school bus that slid off the bridge there. And that what's happening is the kids that actually didn't survive are pushing your car off of the bridge to keep you from being harmed.
I've actually heard that story many times. In fact, the very first story I heard about that came from a bridge in San Antonio, Texas, which actually, believe it or not, I just came across the version on one of my old VHS tapes. There's several examples here in Chicago, including called Munger Road. And the unfortunate thing is every time you try to track down that there was an actual accident that took place, you never find it.
Right, it's hard to find the information out there.
Yeah, it's like an urban legend, and the idea that these cars actually kind of go uphill is really kind of an optical illusion when you're actually able to do tests out there. What do you call it? Where the guys come out with the cameras and you kind of like, kind of like they shoot down to measure and so forth. I forget what they call that, unfortunately, right offhand. But it's actually,
I know exactly what it is, and I can't think of it either.
But actually, what it is, it's actually you're rolling downhill, but because of the terrain, it looks like you're rolling uphill. And then when you come back around and you examine the baby powder on the bumper and the deck of your car, it's really our handprints, basically, because our handprints, our hands have a lot of oil on them. And every time you close your hood or you touch everything, unless you're wiping it off the very next day with wax and whatever, it's going to stay on there. You put baby powder on there, you don't see it immediately, but then eventually it shows up as fingerprints. Now, again, I'm not out to debunk every ghost story out there, but I am.
No.
But if there's a logical explanation, I'm going to try to put forth that logical explanation, or at least a possible logical explanation. And this has been kind of debunked at these locations, just for the simple fact that there's never been a car accident or a bus accident at this site, and no children were killed. Now, the thing in San Antonio, Texas, which is kind of interesting, they don't talk about the bus accident, if there was a bus accident, but the neighborhood actually claimed to rename every street by the first name of the children that were killed there, which is kind of amazing. So, that's where it all started. And kind of just spread across the country.
That is kind of interesting to hear that they would rename all the streets the first name of the children that were killed in that area.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of history for our country. I mean, our country's 200 years old, and we've been through 2 plagues now. We're currently going through one, and we've had a civil war. And here in Wisconsin, in Madison area, we have Camp Randall, which is where the Badgers, Wisconsin Badgers play and stuff. The stadium there. Well, that area was actually supposed to be a encampment for the soldiers of the the Union soldiers. And I think also that they said it was a holding area for some of the captured soldiers,
like a prisoner of war camp almost.
Yeah. So that's got some history there, and there's obviously stories there about that area. And then there's a cemetery on Speedway Road. And for the life of me, I can't remember the name of it. But we did an investigation out there too, later in the day, and it was last year we did this, and I thought maybe it looked like I caught something on camera at that time too, and of course that particular day I was fighting mosquitoes off, and I didn't have the camera on a tripod, so
yeah, we
went back the following day, and I set the camera on a tripod and tried to get it as right as I could with the area that I shot originally, and see if I could debunk it myself, like I said I like to do. So we got some of that up there on our websites too, or on the YouTube. So there's just different areas here, like Sanatorium Hill off Northport Drive. That one is an old tuberculosis hospital. So that, there's a church with a cemetery next to it that's got graves from the 1800s.
Wow.
So there's a lot of history in the Madison, Wisconsin area too.
Yeah, one of my fortes, besides just going into spooky places all the time, is Civil War sites. I mean, basically, we just came back from a trip to Tennessee, which was our first trip this year, by the way, after the lockdown all over the place. We went down to Marion County, Tennessee, which only had 32 confirmed cases and only 1 death in the entire county, so I felt pretty safe down there. We were investigating places like Stones River Battlefield in Murfreesboro. We went down to the old South Pittsburgh Hospital, the Hales Bar Marina Dam area, and also later the Brushy Mountain Prison. In August, our team is going out to Gettysburg and also a side trip to Pennhurst Asylum out there, which is someplace I've never been to. I've been out to Gettysburg at least almost a dozen times, and it just seems like every time we go out there, we find interesting stuff. Through our EVPs, the responses we get are usually very relevant. The last time we were there was in 2017, and that was the very last time I had a chance to investigate with my fellow friend and colleague, Rosemary Ellen Guiley, who died shortly after that. And I've been a close friend of hers for well over 30 years. And we were actually in the triangular field, and we were using an obelisk in phonetic mode, which allows the spirits to form their own words. And we said, were you wounded or something like that? And it said, I got shot or something to that effect. And I said, where? And it immediately responded with in the eye, which probably would have been a fatal wound, knowing the size of those musket balls back then. And the crazy part is we had a kind of a rookie investigator with us. This was her very first investigation, and being out in the middle of the battlefield and hearing those types of things and actually having experiences herself, she got so freaked out that she didn't do any more investigating the whole time we were there. She stayed in the hotel room. And when she came back to Chicago, she quit the group. And that's really kind of shows you how it can react differently on different people. We've had many experiences out there. In fact, I did the only actual legal investigation of Gettysburg back in 1995 at night with the film crew from the show Sightings that used to be on back in the 1990s. And I actually got a clip of that on my Facebook timeline that actually shows us out there in the middle of the night investigating the triangular field, the Devil's Den area, and the Little Round Top. And I was getting crazy hits on my Geiger counters, my Gauss meters at the time, which is what I had, and even what they call a static field detector, a negative ion detector. Right in the middle of an open field, there should be no static built up at all. But occasionally I'd walk into an area and it would just bury the needle for no apparent reason. It was, I didn't feel anything different. However, I will say this, and it never made the cut of the show. I never figured out why. I was actually mic'd. So I was down, and they made me go down in the middle of the field by myself, which I didn't care. And they were safety up on the top of the ridge, and they were kind of filming down at me. But on top of having all these meter hits, I was actually hearing the sound of people talking, what sounded like canteens and canteen cups that clank. You can know what that clanks kind of sounds like. Yeah. And it was just, it couldn't have been further than 20, 30 feet away. And all around that field at that time were bushes, and there was a stone wall that went around that whole field. And I even mentioned that. I said, you guys hearing this? You guys hearing this? No, we're not hearing this, but I was hearing it. So I don't know, maybe I wasn't facing the right way, but I actually heard an audible sound, and this was probably a residual of something that had taken place back in 1863.
Yeah, it's very likely. I know of two different types of hauntings, which is residual and intelligent. One of them is like a videotape on a loop, and the other one you can actually interact with and get responses back. So what kind of equipment do you actually use when you're doing your investigations?
Well, it depends on where we're going, but our general arsenal will include, things like a tri-field natural EM meter, which is probably the best meter in the market. That meter never hardly ever goes off. If it does go off, there's something there. That's why you won't see it in any of these paranormal shows. They used a cheaper EMF meter, which goes off all the time, which is just picking up, just background radiation,
Right.
or background EMF. We use a very high quality digital recorder. We use several different cameras. I have a thermal tablet that I use for hot spots, for cold spots. Again, that's physical stuff. It's not reflections. We also use a full spectrum cameras. I have several night shot cameras, including a 4K night shot camera, which is amazing. With we found these very nice infrared lights called After Lights. I have to give them a plug because, I mean, they're absolutely amazing lights. I've never seen anything like it, and they're diffused light. Instead of having just a ball where the light hits it, kind of diffuses out, which is really kind of nice. We have we use the Paranormal Pup 2. I have the Obelisk, the Obelisk X, the Obelisk PX. We have a device called the Phasma Box that we do use as an application that you can find on the internet. We use different types of thermometers, including digital pyrometers, which are actually the most sensitive devices in the market. Literally, you can take them and you can, you're getting a reading of, say, 75, you'll blow into it like that. It goes up to like 80 degrees and then right back down to 70 degrees immediately. So if you're taking it and you walk through a cold spot, it'll give you an instantaneous reading, not like some of the devices like the Melmeter or other devices that literally have to go intensive a degree until they finally reset themselves. The reason they're able to create an instantaneous reading is the filament that is there is so tiny. The smaller the filament, the more sensitive it is to cold and heat. We use I have an SLS camera, a structured light sensor that's part of the Kinect system. That actually came from Digital Dowsing. It's a $1,200 device. I have over $14,000 worth of ghost hunting gear that I've collected over my lifetime. And a lot of it, unfortunately, we don't use. We're trying to use more of it. We're actually trying to do going back and trying to use some old-fashioned equipment that we getting back in some analog stuff like cassette tapes to see how that's going to work. Going back and using old TVs, little portable TVs that you can probably find in a thrift store that people have discarded. They're great ghost hunting tools for ITC. Basically because they will not ever receive a signal because everything is digital, and those TVs basically work off of gravitators or something, or using a coax cable that produces or it takes an analog signal and divides it into a viewable screen that you can see. Those devices will never pick up anything. So if you got the device on to a channel that obviously does not pick up a channel anymore, and you hear voices coming through, or you see shapes coming through, whether it be shadows or whatever, there's no way to explain that. There's absolutely no way to explain that, and they're great ITC devices. Now, so far we haven't had any success with them, but it's just like anything. It's just where you're at and how how the ghosts feel comfortable with you, if they're willing to talk with you at any given time. I've been in places that we've gotten very little or no evidence, and that's something I try to tell people is don't be too expectant when you go to locations, especially things that you've seen on television that say that they're the most haunted locations in the world. You get out there and your expectations are going to be high to pick up something like that. And you may not get nothing at all. It really depends on the situation, the kind of people you have with you. They may be more open to males, more open to females, more open to young people, older people. That's why we have everybody in our group ask questions. And sometimes we find the right mix between what we're asking and what the spirits want to answer.
Right. Yeah, because some of them are more comfortable around a male or a female, depending on what it is. And then also the people themselves always give off a certain type of energy and vibe as well. And you know, if there are spirits that are there, they're going to pick up on that, and that will also determine whether they want to speak with that person or not as well.
Yeah.
Now, one of the devices you were talking about, you called it an obelisk?
Obelisk.
Or obelisk. Now, is that similar? Is that similar to a spirit box?
No. The obelisk, the spirit box basically sweeps AM/FM frequencies very quickly, randomly.
Okay. Right.
And there's variations of
and I don't trust those because of the fact
SB11, mini portals, mini boxes, Frank's box, Joe's box. Those are all ghost boxes, okay? And they're all different names, and they're usually by the name of the creator. Now, an obelisk is actually a device produced only by Digital Dowsing on digitaldowsing.com. Bill Chappell, who was a genius, he lives out in Loveland, Colorado. And the obelisk is basically a device that has a speech synthesizer built in. And what it is there are several, each obelisk usually has different modes you can put it into. The most two prominent modes are used as phonetic mode and in dictionary mode. Now in the dictionary mode, there are about a little over 4,000 words in there, very common words to the English language. So the idea is that when you ask the question, in theory, the ghosts are able to manipulate the device and pull out the appropriate word out of the database to respond. Now, just like anything, it takes the spirits a while to figure out what this device is and how to work it. It's like a child with a new toy. So sometimes initially you'll get a lot of garbage words that come through that make no sense at all. You might say, what's your name? They'll say cupcake or something crazy like that. But then eventually as they begin to manipulate it and learn how to, oh, I need to apply this energy to it because it is sensitive to EMF. And that's another thing which is very interesting about this device. So we always start out with the dictionary mode first because we're able to actually see the word on the device. But then if we really want to get scientific, we get into what's called the phonetic mode. Now the phonetic mode does not use the database at all. It does not use any of the words in the database. What it is, it allows the spirits to form their own words, putting together vowels and consonants, putting them into words, and then putting the words into sentences. So entire sentences will come through. You know, the dictionary mode, only one word at a time comes through. So if you wanted to say, hi, how are you? You had to say, hi, how are you, right? One word at a time. Where in the phonetic mode, they would say, how are you? And it would just say, just like me and you are talking right now. And I've actually had that device spit out entire full sentences, very relevant to where we were at. Good example, we were investigating Mercy Hospital in Gary, Indiana, sometimes known as St. Mary's Hospital. It's the hospital where the Michael Jackson family was born. The entire clan was born out there. It's basically now part of the Gary Police Department. In fact, the funny part about it is their locker room was the old morgue. We were actually able to get down in there in between shifts and do some investigating. They were very helpful to us. Now, we were out there, and I had put that obelisk in my top pocket, and we were walking up 5 flights of stairs to the 5th floor, which was a surgical suite. Now, up the entire 5 flights of stairs, or 4 flights of stairs, it did not say a single word until we got to one little room that was filled floor to ceiling with patients' records, boxes of patients' records just left behind, which is kind of crazy. And unfortunately, I got a kind of a habit when I go to places. I always try to ask first if I can take a little piece of the building away or a little memento. I got a little kind of museum down here, which my wife doesn't really like because she says I'm bringing home ghosts. But my friend was videotaping as we walked up to here, night shot, very clear. And it's actually on my website. You can see it very clearly. And he goes, wow, look at all the patients' records. And he goes, do you want to take some of those? And before he got the whole sentence out of his mouth, the obelisk woke up and said, literally, get out of here. Get out of here. It's kind of a mechanical sounding voice. And he goes, did it just say get out of here? He goes, yeah. He goes, well, I'm sorry, I was just joking. But it was really crazy because it was very relevant to where we're at. And then the obelisk didn't say much the rest of the time we were there. So it was just something that happened that they didn't want those records or anything touched in that room. Now, we went back about 4 years later. That room was completely nailed shut. We couldn't even get in there. And it was a very bad state of disrepair. Apparently, people had broken in there and were stealing copper wires and copper tubing and stuff out of the building. And the ceiling was collapsing. It was water all over.
Yeah, that's kind of what happens with the older buildings.
But the obelisk is I got several different obelisks. The very first obelisk I got was called the video obelisk, which actually is a very neat device. It's got a battery pack. It's got a set of goggles that go over your glasses, or if you don't have glasses, just you sit on your thing, and they're actually night shot. So you're actually able to walk around with this little pistol grip thing, which has infrared illuminators on it, and you can literally walk around in the dark. But just be careful because it's not an intense amount of illumination.
Right.
And it also has a phonetic mode, a dictionary mode built in. So when you're asking the questions in your EVP sessions, you'll hear the voice come through and the word will appear in the goggles. So
that's so cool.
What's your name? Dale. Dale or something might appear in the goggles. And of course, anything that's just in the database. Whatever words that are in there. So that's kind of neat. Or you can actually take that device and hook it up to your video camera. So as you're videotaping it, it'll transpose that response right onto your video. There's actually video inputs, which is really kind of neat too. And that was my very first obelisk. That was a $600 device I purchased from Digital Dowsing. So
the one you're using now, what does that one cost?
The one I use right now is the Obelisk X. I also have an Obelisk PX. Now, the PX is kind of neat. It's the one step below that. But that device actually allowed you to enter more words. It had an RS-232 port. I don't know if you remember those, but the 9-pin devices that used to, you could actually go in there into your computer, hook it up in there, and then you could add your name, your team's name in there. So in other words, if you wanted to say, can you say my name? It would have the name in the database to pull out and say to you, which is that really kind of neat. But the Obelisk X, and I've actually had an Obelisk ITC. I've had other obelisks throughout the years, and I've actually worked with an Obelisk 3. I've worked with an Obelisk 5. In my opinion, in my personal opinion, the Obelisk X may be the best obelisk out there. It's extremely hard to find. I've seen it as high as $600 on eBay. I think I bought mine for about $150, brand new from Digital Dowsing, but people will try to price gouge because they don't make them anymore. They do have a really nice phonetic mode. When I've worked with some of the other obelisks, whether there was a defect in there, it seemed like it was always repeating the same thing. Like it would say, you'd ask the question and go da 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 da, the same thing. I go, that's kind of crazy. Why is it kind of like repeating itself? So I didn't enjoy that, and I didn't work with it very long. But going back to the Obelisk X, it's a great device. It just runs off two AA batteries, and it runs for weeks before you have to replace the batteries.
That's pretty cool. It's pretty cool.
It is. It's a neat device. It's one of the ones that we're really excited about, and it's an application. And usually, I'm not a big fan of any ghost applications. There are a number on there. There's Ghost Radar, which, if you're familiar with that, it's that little screen that kind of goes around and kind of scans for ghosts in the room.
Are you talking about the app for these?
Yeah, the apps for those. Yeah. Well, this app here does not work on a cell phone. It has to be a Windows-based object, like a tablet or a laptop. And basically, you can find it at I'll give them a plug, extremesenses.com. It's called the Phasma Box, and it's amazing. We got some amazing hits on here. We were in a cemetery in Indiana that had no graves on it, just woods, and we asked the question, how many graves are out here? There was a short pause, and it said more than 100. We were in a Elgin casket factory, and we're using a Phasma box. We're using the SLS camera, and there was a stick figure next to a fuse box that was not connected to anything because it was there as an effect only, because around Halloween you dress it up to scare people around Halloween. So I asked this ghost or whatever it was that was there, that was showing up as a stick figure, can you touch that the box, can you throw one of the switches? A voice came through and says, it doesn't work. Now, how do you explain that? I mean, these are not
pretty cool
radio signals. I mean, it does use internet radio and sound banks mixed along with a reverb and echo effect, which is kind of creepy in some cases. Now, a lot of crazy stuff comes through, but we have just gotten some just amazing stuff here recently on the Phasma box. My friend sold me on it. He was asking kind of a weird question one day. He just said, do you like bacon? A voice came through and it says, I like bacon.
Well, yeah, bacon's good, man.
Yeah, it is. I'm sure the spirits realize that too. So that's something, if you've never heard of it, I mean, it only costs $14.95 for the app, and you actually get 2 apps for the price of one. A regular app called the Phasma box and an Optima version, which is also an upgraded version of it as well. And we use it quite a bit. We start out with the Obelisk. And if we don't get anything there, we go to this device, we go to this device until we find a device that the spirits like to interact with. And eventually we find something that we get some responses with.
Pretty cool. Pretty cool. Yeah, the reason I asked you about that is because when you were talking about the person that quit on you,
yeah.
you mentioned that you were using the Obelisk, and that the way you described it originally there kind of sounded like one of those spirit boxes. I don't like the spirit box because of the fact that it scans the radio frequencies and you never know what you're going to get.
Have you ever worked with an SB11?
No.
Okay, the SB7 was one of the very first commercially produced ghost boxes. Before that, they had the Hack Shack, the radio Hack Shack that you put together yourself.
Right.
The SB7 was the first one that came out. It scans very slow and much slower than the SB11. You have to have an external speaker because the speaker, even on 30, you can barely hear it. And it does pick up all radio chatter. Now, the SB11, which is the device that came after it, is actually 2 SB7s put together. You can have one scan forward, one scan reverse, one scan AM, one scan FM. And the neat thing about the SB11, you can actually disconnect from the antenna. So in theory, you're not picking up any radio signals at all.
Yeah, that's actually
close to a big 50,000 watt broadcast studio very close by you, and in which case you might still get a bit of radio bleed through. But we turn that device on and all you hear is and hardly a word come through there at all. So if you want to get a good ghost box that takes that guesswork out of that, I would say get an SB11, a spirit box, a PBSB11 or PSB11. That's what they call them. You can find them commercially all over. Again, you can turn the radio signals on. You can turn the radio signal off. I always have mine off all the time because I want to try to minimize the possible radio contamination. In fact, going back to the Phasma box, we even thought one of my associates and colleagues had thought that perhaps we are broadcasting our questions out because we're using a tablet and we're using something that's an application. Maybe we're actually broadcasting our questions out. Somebody's hearing them somewhere and then responding back, and we're picking them up.
All of it.
I'm sorry.
So and somebody hears it and they're just responding for the hell of it.
Yeah. So we actually turned off the microphone on the tablet, so we're not broadcasting ever, and we were still getting responses. So
that's good. That's actually pretty good.
Yeah.
But yeah. That's why I was asking, though. I mean, like I said, with the scanning the frequencies and stuff, I really don't trust that.
Yeah, we have a whole section. If people want to go to my website, ghostresearch.org, they can look on the side. You'll see a link for GRS equipment, Ghost Research Society equipment. You can click on that. You can see almost all the equipment that we have, what it's used for, pictures, websites, and prices where you can get that stuff from.
Cool. Well, looks like we're coming up on an hour, and I know you have other obligations, and I don't want to keep you too long. I appreciate you coming in and talking with us and answering some questions, even though I probably kind of goofed it. I kind of feel like Joe did that day I couldn't make it, and he had the solo.
Yeah. What happens? I mean, if I could just mention one more thing before we.
Oh yeah, go right ahead.
If people want to get in contact with me or talk with me, they can go through the Ghost Research Society website again at ghostresearch.org. I also do have a Facebook page. You can just look for me on Facebook. I have a Ghost Research Society page on there as well that people can check into. I've been doing a lot of live broadcasts almost every day at about 4 o'clock Central Time, live Facebook stuff that I've been getting into that people can join in on. And if people are interested in any of the books I have, 6 books that I have written, including 2 on Windy City Ghosts, 1 on spook lights, 1 on ghost hunting techniques, spirit photography, and haunted highways and bridges. They can find those, again, on my website at ghostresearch.org. It's the only place you will get an autographed copy unless you see me in person somewhere. I mean, if you buy them off of eBay or Amazon, you'll get a copy, but you won't get an autographed copy, and I can personalize it as well. And we also sell other stuff on there as well. We have some documentaries that I've been on, including one on Bachelor's Grove Cemetery, a very famous site here in the Chicagoland area, and also 2 of a series of DVDs called Ghosts Across America that I was in. So you can find all that on the merchandise page on the Ghost Research Society. And it's a good way to connect with everybody too. So there's a whole page on there on spirit photography, both pictures that are real, pictures that have natural explanations, or in some cases outright frauds. Tons of other websites that I've connected with that people can also click onto, and we always share mutual links. So if you guys have a mutual link you want me to share with you, I'll be more than happy to put it up. We like to network with other groups and network with other people to get the word out for what they're doing as well as what we're doing at the Ghost Research Society.
All right. Well, sounds good. I appreciate you popping in, saying hi to us, and having a discussion. And looks like Joe's still on his phone there because they don't have power.
Well, he said he at least saw the show on his phone, so that's good.
Yep. I think him and his wife both have it up on the phones because there's the 2 different Facebooks that we got going.
Sure.
Yep. Again, appreciate it, and hopefully you had a good time with us here.
Oh, absolutely.
even though we have hiccups going on.
If you guys ever want to have me come back, you just send me a shout out or something, and maybe all 3 of us can get together and do.
Oh, definitely will. That actually sounds fun. I'd love to do an investigation with someone else who's actually been doing it a lot longer. So, but you can always find us, Joe and I, on the utterlyinsaneproductions.com. And yeah, it looks like he's popping a few things up here. And he's usually the one that does this. I'm usually the one that's like, okay, we're done.
And you can find you guys on Facebook too.
Oh yeah, we're on Facebook we got both here, the Mark Joe Show and also the Utterly Insane Productions Insane Asylum. So definitely find us there if you guys want to check more of our stuff out. Dale, thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
I'm humbled because I've seen your profile, man. I'm glad that you decided to come on and chat with us, man.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
All right. Well, thank you again.
All right.
And we will talk to you again.
All right. Well, be safe out there.
Oh, definitely. Thanks, Dale.
Okay. Take care.
Yep. You too. All right. How the hell do I stop this?